With huge increases of negative interactions with wildlife pertaining to bears and mountain lions in California, the Department of Fish and Wildlife is working on a conservation plan for black bears. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, we are seeing numbers reported by the Department of Fish and Wildlife on predators in California such as bears and mountain lions that are pretty disturbing. So to talk about it, we've brought back on the legislative director of CRPA. He is also the host of Firing Line Radio on AM 590 The Answer, coming to you every Saturday at 1 p.m. That is Rick Travis. Rick, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, guys, please, as always, it is working. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps with the algorithms to get this message out to as many people as possible as we try to progress this Second Amendment movement in California coming into the 2024 election. So, Rick, let's just go ahead and jump right into, actually, you know what? Before we jump right into some of the numbers and some of the staggering things that we're seeing from the Department of Fish and Wildlife itself, Rick, why is this not just a hunters community issue? Why is this an issue for every single California citizen when it comes to population size of bears and mountain lions and even wolves?
Well, the first thing is all wildlife belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to a landowner or anything like that. And that's something that's been confused a lot throughout history, that wildlife that might be on like someone's private ranch belongs to the rancher. No, it doesn't. It belongs to the people. It's in the public trust. Secondly is when any one species, predator or otherwise, gets out of control and exceeds their carrying capacity, which is the ability of the land to support that particular species, it throws everything else in the ecosystem out of whack. And that's where we lose wildlife, sometimes just within a region and sometimes permanently. And due to the fact that it belongs to all of us, whether you want to go and take photos of it, and also overpopulation leads to a whole host of problems I'm sure you're going to want to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into that. You know, the Department of Fish and Wildlife hasn't had a bear management plan that was done, I think, since the 80s. You can correct me if I'm wrong there.
1998 was the last one.
1998. So they've got another one going through the department right now. It's been proposed. It's going through the comment period right now. I guess my first question to you is, like, why is this even called a bear conservation plan as opposed to a bear management plan? We see estimates within the plan ranging from 50,000 to 80,000 bears in California. Also, what is the carrying capacity there, and what are some of the consequences that we're going to see with a plan like this?
Wow. That was like 8 questions all at once. Thanks, Kevin. So the first one was, you're asking, why is it called a conservation plan, not a management plan? Maybe that's a little bit of honesty coming from the department, because they're not truly managing the bears and a lot of other species. And so they're trying to come up with plans. Now, in fairness, because I know some of them are probably going to take that as a shot from me, but in fairness, the department is also being divided up by a lot of different groups coming into this space. And I think that's important for all of us to understand. I mean, you have groups that, based on their cultural heritage, are saying, hey, bears are important to us and they serve these purposes. My only caution with that is all of us have cultural heritages. I mean, I have a Nordic heritage, but while I have a Nordic heritage, I don't feel I have the right to tell people you can or can't do something with a certain symbol of that, because that Nordic heritage goes back a long ways and people haven't been doing that for quite a long time, other than to reenact it. So I'm not putting that down, but I'm just saying, I think we need to be balanced in our approach, and I think we need to be respectful. And I think we need to look at ways to do it, but I don't think one person's culture or one person's perspective should outweigh the other ones. You also have people that look at bears as being an iconic animal. They are. And you have people that confuse the bears. And one of the great examples I'll give is, you look to the California state flag, it has what is called the California grizzly. And so we've had groups like the Center for Biological Diversity that in the past decade have tried to get grizzly bears reintroduced to California, most notably the Rocky Mountain grizzly bear. Technically, grizzly bears never existed in California. People are like, whoa, Rick, it's called the California grizzly. Yeah, it was just another form of the American black bear. And what you have to realize is the American black bear comes in multiple colors. We have white black bears here in California. There's one in Yosemite National Park. We have cinnamon colored black bears. We have brown black bears. And we have black. They're all black bears. They're just different color variations, Kevin. And so, and we call some of them Yogi and some of them Boo Boo and some of them, have names like Smokey, etc. So there's no bear carrying a shovel and wearing blue jeans and suspenders, and there's no guy wearing an old hat from the 50s and going, "Hey, Boo Boo, let's go get a picnic basket and having an intimate relationship with a ranger." That doesn't exist in reality. But because we've ascribed that, sports teams, everything else, the bears are without a doubt an iconic species. But when any species of an animal exceeds what you called carrying capacity, and what does that mean? Carrying capacity is the ability of the land, in this case, California, to sustain a certain species, in this case, the American black bear, and that number scientifically is 30,000. If you go much over, you end up in trouble because you end up with a host of problems that we'll talk about. Or if you go way under, then you can get to a point of where a species becomes threatened, endangered, and if still not resolved, extinct. And that's important in this conversation because when one species overpopulates within an ecosystem, Kevin, it's at the detriment of other species. And that's what we're seeing in the landscape. As you put forward, right now, we're using the figure of 65,000 plus bears in California. The feds say that's closer to the top number the department put in their report in this conservation plan of excess of almost 81,000 bears. No one's really looking at the lower number of 50,000. It's at technically 49,000 and change. No one's really looking at that number. But in the case of 50,000 bears, you're still at like 2/3 more bears than the state can handle. And at 80,000, you're almost at 3 times the number. So what have we seen? We've seen a thing called kleptoparasitism. Kleptoparasitism is a scientific term of when one species steals from another for food. Most of the time that happens because of opportunistic, but when it happens excessively, it's because that species doesn't have enough food sources. We're seeing bears take 70+% of all mountain lion kills because they can, run up to the mountain lion. Bears are bigger than the mountain lion by a factor of 3 to 4, depending on the size of the bear. Mountain lion gives its food up. So what does the mountain lion have to do? It has to go kill more. So we end up with mountain lions killing more deer than they should be. And we have several deer populations that are very quickly becoming threatened and could actually topple. We could lose them in California because we simply have too many predators.
Well, let's go ahead and correlate here, or at least connect the bear population to the mountain lion population, and perhaps the fact that we're not necessarily learning from our actions. And also perhaps you can answer a couple of questions that I have within this. The first question would be: is the hunting community more or less the best suited community to actually observe the populations that's happening out in the wilderness? Is there, I know the department does surveys. I know there are plenty of animal rights activist groups that, they get their scientists to come in and talk about populations. Is the hunting community the best community to actually observe this? Because I can go back and see letters from the hunting community to the Department of Fish and Wildlife from 2019 suggesting things like legalizing baiting for bear hunting to help decrease the population, while there were plenty of scientists saying that the bear population was hurting in California. And Jacob, if you can actually bring this up while we continue to talk about how there's a mountain lion issue in the state, we see articles like this one, titled "California Mountain Lion Population is Thousands Fewer Than Previously Estimated." And they go on in this article about how they've got scientists who are estimating there's a lot less mountain lions than the department even says. Are we failing to learn from past mistakes in underestimating these populations? And then what do you see the consequences of this with another species in mountain lions?
So, Kevin, those are excellent questions. I would say let's tackle the first one about the role of hunters in this space. And I would say a kind of a shout out to the opposition. I don't want to offend anybody that thinks we should never talk about the opposition, but our opposition has asked some really good questions that need to be answered in this space. Like, where are we at with the bears? How many bears? And so, I'll look at like Stanford Biological Diversity. I don't normally sit on the same side of the table with them at all. But I mean, they literally came to the department and said, hey, based on some numbers you're giving, we think the bear population is collapsing. Stanford Biological Diversity, the same as CRPA and everybody else, spends a lot of money in these different areas to try to make sure things are being done correctly, or at least in balance or in concert by working together. So how does the far left in management and the far right and everybody in between make these mistakes and have these various articles? Well, Kevin, we were told every year, yeah, the population's somewhere 25, 28,000. So you take that number, and then you take the number that Center for Biological Diversity was looking at, which was over the previous decade, 1,700 bear were being taken. Then it was 1,500 bear. Then it was 1,300. So it's this declining graph. So if that is your modeling, could you make the argument that Center for Biological Diversity made of like, oh my God, the bear population's crashing in California? Yes, you could. Why were we not making that? Because we were looking at a different graph showing that the human wildlife interaction was just going opposite directions. And we were seeing, numbers of roadkills, et cetera. Well, the department did nobody any favors because in the report, they admitted that they've known for the better part of a decade that they were far beyond the carrying capacity and been fluctuating 45,000, 50,000, 60,000 bears. For a decade, they sandbagged all the NGOs and the people that work on this. Doing a plan once every 25 years on an iconic species like black bears is ridiculous. They're done every 5 to 10 years in other states in the union. So California, that prides itself, a department that prides itself as being a leader, did not lead on this issue. And so as a result, we now at a position of where the black bear population is obviously out of control. And then when you go back to your specific questions, well, are hunters the best ones to observe? Yes, in the field, it is the data that comes back from hunting. When you take a black bear, Kevin, you take the skull to the department, a tooth is removed from that skull. Along with that is a report card that says, this is the location of where the bear was taken, this is the date, this is the time of the day. We know the sex by the genetics in there from that tooth. We know what the bear was eating. We know all sorts of scientific data. But Kevin, what do you have to do with that card and that tooth to get that data? You got to use it.
Take the bear. Yeah.
And we literally, the department has admitted it has boxes of teeth, boxes of data cards that have not been examined in years. Not months, not weeks, years. So when the department, and what the department will tell you is, well, we didn't have the money, which is true, because of budget cuts by the governor. And so what has happened is this lack of public discourse and disclosure of our bear population numbers are going through the roof. Our ability to collect data has been stable thanks to hunting. Our ability to process that data has went the opposite direction. And so we're literally throwing darts at a dartboard. And that's why, Kevin, you're well educated. I'm well educated. You don't go into a stats class and give for your final project a statistic that has a variable of 25%, because you're not going to pass the class. And that's a simple class. The only person getting hurt is the student. 25% up or down, that's not a viable statistic. And that is what we have coming out of the department. You mentioned mountain lions. I want to touch on that really quick. The mountain lion baseline population is set at 4,000. 4,000. Where does that number come from? Oh, that comes from over 50 years ago in 1971, when the big study was done that there were 4,000 mountain lions in the state of California. Today, that number is 4 times as many. But why do you get the report that goes out there? Because there are groups that were founded to try to save mountain lions and increase them. Kevin, you don't keep your job if all of a sudden you're so successful, you have an overpopulation by saying, hey, we have overpopulation, continue to give. Not in this economy, you're not going to keep a job. So they get people to go out there and write reports, and then they put them in the media. But the group that's nonpartisan that should be looking at this is the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they simply do not have the people. And it's not because they don't want to get the people. They want to. I know some of the people that they're very good. They want to get the people. They just don't have the finances to get the people.
So it sounds like you got a lot of factors going on here. You've got multiple sets of data, all that needs to be deciphered by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who might not even have the budget to do the necessary thing in the first place. I guess my final question to you, Rick, along with your final thoughts, is what are the real world consequences, not just with the mountain lion population, not just with the bear population, but with the entire ecosystem if we continue to operate way over the carrying capacity for these predators in California?
So excellent question. So I'll try to do it on three different levels. So the first level is look at the predator structure right now. Apex predators, top of the predator line, are obviously humans, wolves, bears, cougars, and then you can start to look at some other things like bobcats, coyotes, and others. All of those populations are huge, including humans. All those populations have coexisted in California, according to science, according to very good scientific investigation, for 30 millennia, 30,000 years. Here's the problems that we have. We know from the Yellowstone experiment, which is when wolves were reintroduced, that it took about 20 years for that to shake out of how the different predators lined up and balanced the power structure. Wolves are now in Southern California. We've had them in the Grapevine. We've had them in Ventura, San Luis Obispo, in the Central Valley along the coast. Wolves are coming into the space. Mountain lions and bears have not had to deal with wolves for the better part of a century in this state. So that's a new dynamic. And there's kleptoparasitism going off of that because bears, generally speaking, not always in an overpopulated area, are solitary. So are cougars. Wolves are a pack animal. So picking a fight with a wolf, you just picked it with the whole gang, and you usually aren't going to do too well. So that has increased the number of animals that are being killed by other predators to make up the balance. And we do not know what that looks like because we haven't had enough scientific study to know what that looks like and its impacts. What we do know in this case is one example: California deer went out and successfully collared 100 fawns to see what the fawn mortality rate would be. Normally, you're looking about 30 to 40% of the fawns surviving their first year of life, which enables us to have a really good, healthy herd of deer. 80% of the fawns in the study were killed within the first 30 days by black bears. 80%, which means, holy cow, Kevin, we're not in a good position. That's close to having a population of deer collapse. But that other 20 fawns that made it past the first month, 3/4 of them didn't make it to the first year. So when you have a 5% survivability rate, you're not going to have a sustainable population, especially when cougars are having to kill more deer because the bear is stealing from the cougars and the wolves are harassing both of them. So there you're going to have the loss of many, many other iconic species. Imagine people going to Yosemite and Sequoia. They saw their great-grandparents, their grandparents, and their parents, even when they were young kids, seeing deer in the meadows. No deer. Why? Because the predators have wiped them out. And then you'll see the mass die-off of the predators. And so all the people that love wolves, love cougars, love bears, love to buy t-shirts and everything of it, they're going to be like devastated because it's going to be one of the most horrible die-offs ever. The next issue is what we call zoonotic diseases, which are serious diseases that wildlife gets when they're overpopulated. Are we seeing that? Yes. In the present, we're seeing that bears have meningitis. Meningitis is not a good thing for you and I to get. You see meningitis show up on a college campus and the campus locks down. Why? Because people are going to the ICU. Newsflash, bears don't have ICUs. They just don't. So when bears get sick and they're close together because they're overpopulated, those diseases spread. And the issue with zoonotic diseases, National Institute for Health, UC Davis Veterinary Clinic, everybody will tell you it's a numbers game. Eventually, all diseases can jump, but it's how many times they get a chance to go into a new host. So the more bears that get it, the more that form of meningitis has the chance of spreading to other mammals, including humans. So there's a very real threat. And we have the same threats in other wildlife right now in California. The fact is, the department is under staffed. The department is being given multiple messages. The media has not helped. The media has made everything a game, so to speak, of like, oh, well, we have zombie diseases, we have this disease, we have that disease, that people are overwhelmed. And that's why I'm so appreciative of this, because the public, everyone listening to this, can comment by going to wildlife.ca.gov/conservation/mammals/black bear. I'm sure Jacob will put that in the video for all of you, but you can go there, you can read the 65-page report. And if there's anything that you don't like, you disagree with, we encourage you to hit the comment form online. It takes a couple of minutes and you can submit your comments. But bears, like every other thing in this state, are held in the public trust. They belong to the people. You, the people, can help us out here at CRPA by making your comments.
And I guess to dovetail off of the people, something else that we've seen is those increased interactions, not just sightings, but interactions with mountain lions and bears, even a couple of killings across the state. So there are some real-world consequences here for mismanagement, and we've got to set ourselves on the right path. Any final thoughts on this, Rick, as we go forward?
Yeah, my final concerns, and they're going to be ongoing concerns, and hopefully we can talk about this in the future, Kevin, as we progress, but this is a space where we have to pull emotions out and we have to look at the science. And to do that, we have to process the scientific data. And we're seeing over and over in this state knee-jerk reactions to try to appease one group over the other. And the fact is, one group does not own this. Hunters don't own this. Native Americans don't own this. People that belong to different NGOs that are species specific don't own this. We collectively share this. And there are plenty of solutions that work out for everybody. We, of course, are going to be representing the soundest scientific-based conservation model that supports. And so you realize hunters are not to blame for any of this. In fact, hunters, according to the state of California, according to the previous Governor Brown, we have done more than any other group in the last 100 years to conserve wildlife. And that is a fact that needs to be told over and over and over again.
Yeah, and the hunting community will, surely, as long as there continues to be wildlife out there to conserve. Rick, I want to thank you for coming on. I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate the time and info on this.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for carrying this message.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content and videos like this, please, once again, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this video. Go ahead and hit the notification bell so that you get notified as these videos come out. We're really trying to do the education on the Second Amendment litigation and legislative, as well as the cultural stuff here in California, to make sure that everybody can have it as a high priority going into the ballot box on for the 2024 November elections. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.